Welcome to the Private Lenders Podcast with your hosts from Hard Money Bankers, Jason Balin and Chris Haddon. This podcast is sponsored by hardmoneymastermind.com.
Hey everyone, Private Lenders Podcast, Chris and Jason here. Thank you for checking out the show. Today we're going to be recapping our June event. This is the first time we did this particular event. It was last week here in Maryland, and it came together earlier in the year because we had people from the Mastermind group and people who follow the podcast asking if they could come to an event, participate in more. So we decided to add one. This was the first annual Hard Money Mastermind summer event. It turned out really good. It also is a little bit easier when we get to put these together at home in our own market where we know all the stuff, the restaurants, the hotels, like put it all together is a little bit easier. And we had how many people in the room? About 20, right around 20 people in the room. And a lot of them, this is the first time that we've worked with them in person. Like we know them. Some of them we've done consulting with, some of them we've interacted with on the Mastermind's monthly trainings and stuff. But next level is in person, right? Like you really get to know somebody, their business by working together all day, going out to eat at night. And it was like a 2.5-day event. So yeah, it was great. We're gonna break down all the details and everything that happened.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And typically when you do an event, for the first time, keep in mind, like when we do some of these masterminds and some of these events and things like that, like this isn't like hundreds of people or thousands of people and big, presentations and a whole ordeal. Like these are small, intimate groups of lenders that are all trying to achieve the same thing. Obviously they're trying to scale and grow their businesses and they're trying to deploy capital responsibly. So not only do they not lose money, but they just don't have headaches and they can, these are full-time lenders that are doing this. And some of the other groups that we've done in the past, it's been a lot of the same group members and and it turns into a lot of camaraderie and, everyone's trying to help each other grow. So a lot of the folks in this room didn't necessarily know each other, or if they did, it definitely not in person. It was, on some online stuff, and maybe they have chatted here and there, and it worked out great. Like I feel like everybody got along. We try not to have overlapping markets, the best that we can, and it's tough because there's a lot of people that are doing lending that don't necessarily lend in their home state, or as they've grown, they've expanded to other states. Because, if you're going to do like a mastermind and you want to be very, very open and transparent, it's hard to, really go deep and give trade secrets and go through everything if, the lender around the corner is also doing that. Right. And I get it. I mean, that's why a lot of times we don't bring in local hard money lenders into the mix, because we don't necessarily want to like create and set up your own competition. I'm not saying that's bad. Like there's good things about that, right? You can share deals, you can share capital, you can share resources. So there's plenty of room for everybody. I get that. But, sometimes folks lend in other markets, even though their home market might be somewhere else. But that did happen. And as that do, there was still good, like, hey, I know that borrower, let me help you out with that person, or vice versa type of situation. And I think that's good. And we always come from the mindset that there's plenty of deal flow out there. And, some of the best relationships that we have in this business are other local lenders that we cherish. And, it's funny, we were talking to a lender the other day, and they didn't realize this at the time. It's a little bit off topic, but you'll get the point. They didn't realize off the time that another lender that they were friendly with had the current loan on a property that they were in the process of refinancing, right? So they're about to do a refinance and did some due diligence. It ended up is that a friend of theirs actually was the first lender, coincidentally, on this. And really it was like, listen, your next step is get on the phone with them and talk through it with them. Like, hey, how's the deal performing? Just full, disclosure. They came to me. Like, if you tell me to back off because you want to do this refinance, no problem. You can have it. There's plenty of business to be had. Okay, rant over on that side. So, but like it ended up being a good group, and I would say that anywhere between a few $1 million deployed and about $15 million deployed was average of what was going on. And everyone was very serious about their businesses. Everyone were full-time lenders. And, some of them have been in business for a short period of time. Some have been in business a long period of time. And, the beauty of this lending space is I think a lot of people think it's a race to get the biggest, the fastest, but really it's about profitability. Anyone who's been in this business long enough realizes it's not an ego play of who can do the most deals, who has the most outstanding portfolio, who has the most volume, because typically, the one who has the cleanest portfolio, at a certain sweet spot usually has the most profitable portfolio. That's what ends up happening because, more money, more problems, right? And bigger the deals, the more deals you do, sometimes that's not always the cleanest portfolio. And I think some of the smaller portfolios wish they were bigger. And I believe that some of the bigger portfolios wish they weren't as big as they are. Maybe they're a little bit smaller at this point and a little bit more lean.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely noticed in getting to know a number of members in the group pretty well. They run tight operations. They have some staff, so they don't have to do every keystroke themselves, every phone call themselves. But being sub 10 million with a good chunk of your own capital, it's a really, really profitable operation and manageable and not wild out of control. And you can function when you're out of town. And there's a lot to be said for that. It's not all about being, 50, 75, 100 million portfolio and everything that comes with that. Although that should be plenty profitable too, as long as you play your cards right. But you get the point on that one. So in this mastermind, we decided to do more presentations than we normally do in mastermind meetings. And it was mainly because we hadn't worked with a lot of these people in person before. And we wanted to cover some of the staples of our business. I did one on default management. I did one on raising capital and investor relations, kind of like the playbook on those things, which does keep evolving. I mean, even just the other day when we were doing some stuff on investor relations and default management for a monthly training in the mastermind group, I noticed that my own stuff has developed over time. Now, the game plan's the game plan. A lot of that is kind of fixed, but it does evolve as we do more deals, have more experience in this business, more years, encounter more situations. So these things do evolve slowly over time, which I thought was cool. Plus, we had a couple other presentations from guests. We had Shane Powers talking about the marketing he's doing for a number of private lenders. We had Harris Dainoff, who he is an attorney, specializes in loan docs, commercial loan docs, and he works with a number of lenders in the mastermind group. So they both came in to present, which is super cool and definitely beneficial to the group for those who hadn't met those guys before.
Yeah, I want to go through their two things real quick and why they presented. So, typically, on my end of the business, I did a presentation on, the life cycle of an HMB client, from start to finish. I think that was beneficial for everyone to kind of hear of how are these leads coming in all the way down to a loan maturing, what's all the sides. And then the second day I did something on leads to loans because it is a follow-up process. We are grinding we're grinding daily to get these borrowers, committing to our loan terms and closed. But one of the things that everyone always has questions on is deal flow. People need deals. And the ones that, it gets to a point, a lot of people start off oh, I've never really marketed before. And they get to a point where it's unfortunately, they're doing deals that are a little bit too aggressive, right? It's hey, well, if you're going to do 100% financing and you have cheap terms, you're going to do the sky's the limit. You know what I mean? And you're approving every loan that comes your way. The sky, but that's not a safe business.
Everyone starts that way.
Yeah.
Everyone comes into the mastermind. Almost everybody comes into the mastermind making that mistake of doing too high leverage. And over time, both through working with the group and through their own default experiences, they start backing down off of that leverage.
Chris and I came up with something a few days ago that I think really, really kind of dictates or really kind of explains what the average lender goes through in a 3-year period. So year one, they're doing 100% financing with cheaper terms than their competitors so they can get deals. They're yeah, I got, more deals than I have money because they just keep coming in. Right. And you don't know any better if it's a good deal or a bad deal after year one. Right. You're not going to have defaults in that case. Right. So then all of a sudden they get to a point where it's okay, I don't really want to stop doing these deals because I'm making decent money. But at the same time, like, I need to be a little bit more conservative. We'll like be a little birdie in the back of their ear, like, make them put down 20 or 30%. And they'll be like, you know what, let's try 10% down. Right. So then they'll do 90% loans with 10% down. And they're like, okay, I didn't get much pushback. And, I feel I can sleep a little bit better at night knowing that, at least my borrowers are bringing some money to the table. Right. So that's like year 2. And then all of a sudden, like, deals start defaulting or miss payments and things like that. They get a little bit scared. And then year 3, finally, they're like, you know what? I need to get into 20% down just to be safer as I have deals getting into default. And when I'm in default, like, I'm scared, like I might even lose principal because my down payments weren't high enough. And then they get to a point of like, you know what? 20% down might not even be enough. So it does take time, and it takes time for deals to default. So that was a little bit side note. So anyways, a big topic that everyone wants to hear about is like, hey, how we're finding new deals. And in the past, I typically did presentations on marketing and how we're finding deals and things like that. But like, to be quite honest, like, Shane has been helping us do so much of that, at least the digital side of things related to local SEO and paid ads through, Meta and Google. So he spoke at our May event in Charleston, and he spoke at this one in June. And, he put together a great presentation. I'm going to try to get him to come to our online mastermind next coaching call in the month of July. We're going to try to work on that as well, because
I like that idea.
He has a good presentation put together, and I think it'll benefit a lot of people. And honestly, it's overwhelming for a lot of people because it's a lot of stuff, but for anyone who's heard our entire marketing machine, that's overwhelming as well. And you start small. You start with one segment of it that you can wrap your brain around, and then you work your way up. But, because some things are more relevant to others. Some people, really just be like, hey, I got the time, I got the money, I'm all in, let's do this. And others want to baby step it. So he did that. And, Harris, Dainoff, who does all of our loan docs and, our title review, he's been to almost every single event. And the reason why is because, like, I cannot explain, and Chris cannot explain to all these hard money lenders that we talk to, work with, communicate with, the importance of having a real attorney doing your loan docs and your title review. Like, don't take our word. Like, people just don't take our word for it. It's like, oh, I'm going to do, this. I'm going to do lightning docs. And I was like, okay, well, maybe that's a decent doc set or a good doc set, but who's going to do your title review? Oh yeah, I don't know. Or I'm going to get the title company to do the loan docs for me and the title and a title review. It's like, well, they kind of represent the title company. They're not representing you as a lender. Or I'll just get my in-house attorney. So, ideally you want an attorney who understands commercial loans and business loans and understands how to negotiate and review title. So the reason that, like, we want Harris to come in and speak is because, like, I can't do that presentation. I can't communicate that. There's folks that, will hear him be like, oh my God, like, I didn't realize there was this much negotiation going on between you and the title company to negotiate the best title policy for me. So that's why we try to bring in speakers like that. We'll concentrate, Chris and I will concentrate on presentations that we're experts at, but other folks concentrates on the ones they're experts at. One other quick thing, to note that was pretty interesting is, the in that room, they all the other lenders represented the big 3 loan servicing softwares, just like kind of all the events that we do. Like, in essence, Lender, which is Bryce Matheson, who's also in the group, the Mortgage Office, and then Mortgage Automator. So there was 3 people that use Lender in that group. That we
were trying to get Bryce to come out. It was a little last minute to come out from Arizona, but we tried to get him to do a presentation too.
Exactly, because I was like, hey, you got 3 members in here, like, let's do something. And then a few people used Automator and a few people used TMO. And I really, really like talking to lenders to see what they think of those current softwares, because I know some of the lenders have gone from one to the other. I know some have only tried one. Listen, loan servicing software is a bear. I've heard of lenders trying to create their own, and I'm like, good freaking luck. We've gone through different softwares over the years, and, like, the amount of stuff that is in that. I'm just talking about the loan servicing side of it. I'm not even talking about origination and other things. It's just a bear. It's so big. So I am happy to hear when people are using proper softwares, because I don't even know how you would do this without it. And yeah, as a smaller lender, using an Excel spreadsheet, Google Sheets, things like that, like that's typically what you use just because, softwares get expensive, right? But as they're doing a few deals and it's becoming full-time lending, like you have to do that, especially if you're bringing on investor capital.
Yeah, I really only know off the top of my head one lender who ever developed and created and you implemented forever their own software. It's a local competitor, not going to name them, but there's only one I can think of.
So we heard. That's hearsay, but I think they did too.
I mean, that's hearsay from the founders. I guess they could be lying, but
but maybe they're not using it anymore. That was a long time ago.
That's true. But yeah, I mean, software in our little niche industry is an interesting place because there's actually starting to be some products that are really innovating. For the longest time, it was TMO. TMO was the game. In our little niche industry, other software companies just weren't diving into this. And then Automator came along and they've been adding some interesting stuff that some of it I hadn't even thought of incorporating into a software to, be like end-to-end loan management. And then more recently, Bryce coming in with Lender and the stuff that he's doing, and he's looking at the other softwares and being like, all right, how can I do this better? How can I do that better? Which is good for our industry. It's good to have options. It's good to have real companies developing software. That is a good thing for lenders. And yeah, I mean, last week was great. Like it was heavy doing, back-to-back events because a lot goes into this stuff, they're long days. We're working a lot, hanging out at night. For the other one, like last month we were traveling. And so we've been doing a good bit of it. And if anyone is interested in what's coming up next, Dave Bauer can walk you through it. Just go to hardmoneymastermind.com, click on live events, schedule time to talk to Dave. He'll walk you through what's coming up for the rest of 2025. We appreciate you guys checking out the show. We'll see you here next time on the Private Lenders Podcast.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast. Please note that the opinions stated by all the speakers on this show are only opinions and not intended for legal, financial, or accounting advice. Please make sure to always check with your own legal, accounting, and financial professionals. If you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would spread the word. Make sure to check out hardmoneymastermind.com, the #1 free community for new and experienced private and hard money lenders.